Hey there guys, Arlo here, and today we're reviewing Armikrog. This claymation point-and-click adventure was brought to us by the power of Kickstarter and the mind of the man who made Earthworm Jim. I've been hugely excited about this project for a while now, so let's see how it turned out. No one will fault you if you've never heard of the Neverhood. It's an adventure game done entirely in clay that was made in the 90s, and it's something of a cult classic. Armikrog was made by most of the same creative dudes, and it's a spiritual successor that takes just about every element from the game that preceded it. I'm really sad to say, though, that those elements don't come together nearly as well. The most glaring problem in the whole game is that it uses bizarre logic that never really makes a lot of sense. You'll have trouble knowing what you can interact with and when, which leads to a lot of just clicking all over the place. A lot of the game is just picking up a series of levers and doodads and then just clicking everything you come across to see if you've got what you need to continue. The second main problem that most people have is that the game is buggy. I thought this was maybe just a case of the minority who experience problems being the most vocal, but I hit my share of bugs too. A cutscene that repeated whenever I entered a certain room and forced me to redo one of the game's worst puzzles was a fairly big one. But it was nothing compared to a lever not working, leading to an event happening out of order and permanently halting my progress, forcing me to load from a much earlier save. Bugs, and to an extent logic and conveyance issues, are things that can potentially be ironed out with patches, and when reading early reviews I was hoping that that was all the game needed to become something great. But that's not the case. This is one of the hardest things I've ever had to say, but even without those issues, this game isn't exactly outstanding. The puzzles are rarely very clever. Most of them just involve writing down symbols when you see them or hunting around until you find your clue. They feel less like puzzles and more like work. Instead of trying to figure out the solution to a problem, you're just either inputting what you've been told or completing some tedious task that lets you move forward. Then the story and characters are a whole other thing. The whole game just feels massively underdeveloped. Here's a space guy and his wisecracking dog friend, who never really cracks a lot of wise. They're presented like this super tight comedic adventuring duo, but they don't really talk much at all. Even when the music and sound effects load correctly, which they don't always do, Tommyknot and Beak just sort of do everything silently. They make a few remarks here and there, but these always feel like they're just there to fill a little space and they're not even animated. Then there's very little in the story department. The beginning shows you this awesome cutscene that they made before they even started development on the game, but you'll soon find that that was pretty much the best you'll get. There are a few other bits where little of interest happens, and even then, when Tommyknot and Beak are fully animated and voiced, they're really not saying anything funny. The plot is so hollow with a bafflingly simple villain, and the humor falls flat.
Ooh, smells like bacon in here.
I can't help but feel like it all would have worked better if the characters didn't talk at all, and the whole story was just visual. Then it would at least feel less like the game starts out going for something then fails to deliver. As a whole, it's not so much just that Armikrog feels technically unfinished. Like I said, it's more that it feels like it's underdeveloped. It feels like the skeleton of a game without all the rest of the fleshy parts. Like they laid out the first draft of the script and the puzzles and everything and went, okay, that's it, we're done. No more work, let's just make that. Without giving a second thought to whether it was gonna work. I did enjoy parts of Armikrog. I'm a huge fan of claymation, and basically seeing what the Neverhood would look like in HD was delightful. I love the sets and character models. There were a few funny bits here and there. Some of the puzzles were fun when I wasn't being forced to repeat them multiple times. One of the best parts, interestingly enough, was a story scrawled onto the wall in one of the rooms, though I will say that it needed some serious proofreading. The Neverhood Soundtrack was one of its best elements, so Terry S. Taylor returning to bring us some new silly jams with the same style was almost worth the whole project itself. The thing is, I have to ask myself of the parts that I enjoyed. Did I enjoy them as a gamer, or as a huge fan of both the Neverhood and of Doug TenNapel's work? And I can't tell you for certain what the answer is. On the one hand, it's not always right to closely compare a piece of media to its precursor, but on the other, this is a game that was clearly designed to be a follow-up to the Neverhood, if not actually a sequel, and when I look at it that way, it can't even hold a candle. It feels rushed, almost perfunctory. It lacks the same charm and creativity. The world isn't nearly as fun to explore. And as far as fun cutscenes and overall visual humor go, it's severely lacking, especially considering how the Neverhood excelled in this area. Overall, Armikrog is rough around the edges with a lot of cut corners and wonky controls and inputs. The story and characters never live up to their potential, and some of the puzzles are blah. If you're already a fan of this style like me, you'll probably find enough to enjoy, though considering how short it is, you'll probably still want to wait for a sale. If I were being more critical, I might give Armikrog a 3. But considering that some of the bugs might get ironed out and also factoring in how much I adore the game's style, I'll bump it up to the exact middle of the scale, 4 out of 7. Believe me, this was tough to do. But I've got to be completely honest here. It just didn't turn out that great. Ugh. I'm sorry, Doug. I still love you. Please don't be mad at me. Well, my biggest hope coming out of this is that Pencil Test Studios looks at all the feedback and gives it another go. Because those are some talented dudes, and I know they have the potential to make one seriously rockin' adventure game. I'll catch you later, everybody!